Hello there and welcome to Magic by Design. All good things must come to an end this week as we review Disney's 59th and most recent animated feature, Raya and the Last Dragon, released simultaneously in theatres and premiere access on Disney Plus in March of this year. My name is Ken and I am joined as always by my co-host / brother Garrett. Gar, how are you?
It's so warm.
Yeah, it's 22 degrees.
There's probably people in like hot countries who are like 22 degrees. That's a winter's day down here in Australia. And it's like, listen, you have freak weather. I'm sorry you have to deal with that all year round. But this is just unnatural for us. And it's just oppressively, horribly warm. The window's open, so if you hear any children screaming, it's because we literally melt into puddles of goo or the window not open.
The thing is, though, I think we get humid weather when it's hot. Like, the air is quite low, so when you go outside, it's kind of oppressive.
It's like literally walking into a Mediterranean country. It's like, oh god, suddenly I'm in Spain.
I think it's funny, we spent all year wishing for this weather, and then when it comes, you're like, nah.
We get so upset. I'm also mildly sunburned, you might notice.
Oh yeah,
it's not,
me too.
It doesn't actually hurt or anything. It's just sizzled, just a little red.
Just from going outside a little bit? Oh, you walked home?
Because we went to see this in the cinema, Ken.
In a theatre, in real life.
There's a nice bit of symmetry that we saw Frozen 2, then Worldwide Pandemic, watched every Disney film, to then go and see Raya for our first film after Lockdown 3.
Yeah, it's in about 6 months, I think.
Since we saw Wonder Woman in December.
Wonder Woman 1984.
Wonder Woman! But yeah, I walked in and that was fine because it wasn't that hot. And then I walked out and that was a mistake because it was extraordinarily hot and I was just melting. It's horrible.
Yeah, there was no air there at all yesterday.
Just choking.
Yeah.
Well, I hate
So if we're lethargic in this podcast, we apologise in advance.
If we are slower to get to our takes, it's science. The air is warmer. We're taking in less oxygen. It's literally harder to find the takes because our brains are running slower than usual. So I'm so sorry.
So, Gareth, this film had a long lead up because the release was delayed and then they decided to do premiere access, and then it's kind of only getting its real release now if you think about it.
It's not even getting a real release though. It was like, well, maybe it is elsewhere, but in the cinemas near us, it's only getting one like early morning or afternoon showing, and it's like, that's not a great time to go see it. We managed to sneak it into 12 in the morning on a Saturday. There were some kids there, but thankfully they were well-behaved kids.
For the most part.
The worst part was one of the kids' dads who was on Facebook the entire time. It's like, dude, just sit and watch the film.
Yeah.
It's like, actually, no, it's not a great movie. I didn't particularly like it. But it's a perfectly fine, well-made movie.
We've been doing this for 59 episodes and, of course, you buried the lead again. But yeah, I mean, like, part of the reason the kid is excited to go to the cinema is because he's going with his dad to watch a movie, and the dad, completely not interested for the entire time, may as well have not been there.
Yeah, and I have two issues. One, he was on Facebook the entire time. Use dark mode, especially when you're in the cinema, but also his screen brightness was turned up, which means, like, it's annoying to me. If it's, at the very least, if the screen brightness is turned down, it won't catch my eye, because we were 2 rows behind him.
Yeah.
So, like, it probably won't catch my eye as much if you turn the screen brightness down, but when it's turned up, it's like, you're just being rude. Watch this movie. It's 90 minutes of your life. Nothing is happening on Facebook on this Saturday morning at 12 a.m. that you can't sit and watch this movie.
Nothing is happening on Facebook in general these days. Everyone's abandoning it.
12 p.m. as opposed to 12 a.m. 12 a.m. would be a strange time to see a Disney movie.
With a kid. Yeah. Drag him out of bed.
Midnight showing, kiddo.
Raya had been in development at Disney for some time. It was slated a few years before 2018 when Adele Lim was hired to retouch the script. So there was a script floating around for a while, and then Osnat Shur was hired to produce the movie. In August 2019, Disney officially announced the film at their D23 Expo Walt Disney Animation Studio presentation panel. It's like their upfronts as such.
No, that's their fan fest.
Yeah, but they do like a whole, here's the stuff that's coming. It's kind of like an upfront.
No, it's a fan fest.
It's a fan fest, but it's an
upfront is an industry event with
I know.
press.
It's like
a fan fest. D23 is a fan fest.
It's a fan upfront in the fan fest.
It's just the fan fest.
Okay, fine. All right.
It's like an E3 presentation.
In August 2020, it was announced that Don Hall, director of Winnie the Pooh and Big Hero 6, and Carlos Lopez Estrada, the latter of which who only joined Disney in 2019.
He's in his early 30s as well, which is very young to be directing a Disney movie these days.
Yeah, so they co-directed, which is interesting because that says to me this film was produced in like a year, or maybe even 2.
Well, yeah, because it was meant to come out last year. It did come out. When did this come out?
It came out in March.
Because we were being like, because it was on the Disney Plus thing for a while, and we're like, we're not paying for it. And it did thankfully actually come off the Disney Plus thing the week before. I think it was June 6th it came off. So it's like, heck yeah, the week before we went to review it, it's come off the Disney Plus premium thing onto regular Disney Plus. But then we just went and paid for it anyway to see it in the cinema.
The theaters opened, and we decided to, for the sake of the podcast, Gar.
Yes, but it does mean I haven't actually taken notes because obviously I didn't want to whip my phone out. I'm not a rude person.
You don't want to be Facebook dad.
Yeah, I don't want to be Facebook dad, so I'm winging it. I'm flying without a chute.
Yeah, I had to come up with my takes today. Raya and the Last Dragon has grossed 132 million worldwide to date, excluding the gross from Disney Plus Premier Access.
All things considered, that's pretty good.
Off a budget of 100 million. And as we said, maybe it's getting limited releases here, but cinemas are opening up now across the world, so they're going to have
some
to
more
show
trickle in. But given the state of the world, that's not bad. Do you think there'll be people who will be looking at this as like, oh, colossal flop? Because they don't understand. Like, there'll be, I suppose there's probably, on the wiki it says, oh, COVID-19. But still, there'll be people who are like, 100 million budget, 132 million. Oh, Raya, that was a gigantic flop.
Well, it's close enough to breaking even, so.
Despite, global pandemic. Do you think do you think we've been like that at any stage? It's like, oh, that did terribly. It's like, oh, there was a plague that summer. Or there's a serial killer on the loose, so no one wanted to go to the cinema.
As we said, we don't know the Premier Access take, but based on previous films, I'd say it's ticked into at least breaking even at this stage.
It was quieter than I thought it would be yesterday, because there was maybe 7 others in the cinema as well as us.
You had me book in advance.
Yes, I was like, it's a Saturday morning for a major Disney release, the first week in which cinemas are open. I figured there'd be a decent bunch of kids there, and there wasn't. So that makes me think maybe a lot of kids did watch it on Disney Plus. Or maybe they're just not going to the cinema yet. People are still too scared. So I felt good about going to this. I didn't even have like a bit of anxiety about it. I'm like, yeah, everything's fine.
I felt quite comfortable because
it wasn't that busy. That helps.
Yeah, it's not busy, but in fairness, the cinemas I've been to in Ireland, they do take it seriously. Like, as in, like, everyone wears their mask. They do distance the screenings. Now, the busier screenings do cause a bit of anxiety because they're less distant. But there's plenty of sanitizer around. Once everyone plays ball, this is my main point about, opening up from the pandemic. Once everyone plays ball, we can have nice things. So, yeah.
But people act the fool. And then the nice things are taken away again.
One person takes off their mask to make a point, and but in fairness, they recommend that you keep it on during the film, but nobody's making you.
Yeah, well, you have to eat your popcorn. That's exactly 90% of the reason for going.
The film has received praise from critics who were keen on the animation, visuals, action sequences in particular, characters, voice acting, and the themes. So
that's the entire movie?
Yeah.
Everything.
They were quite hot in it, and you were not.
No, I think there's... I can't... It's not bad. There's nothing about it I'm like, gee whiz, except there's a weird plot thing at the end that I thought was stupid. When the water dragon dies and the water goes away, why does their canal city start crumbling? But we've seen the purple monsters invade places before and they don't start crumbling. Why was the city starting to crumble? Why was it falling apart? What was causing that?
Yeah, I have a few points like that when we get onto the story. There's a lot of things that, for want of a better term, cracks start showing.
Yeah, it's like the cracks started showing in that city for no reason whatsoever. Literally, the city just started crumbling and falling apart. I'm like, is there something about like the structural integrity of it without water? Because it's not floating. It's not an island. It's a canal. And they expressly say it's a man-made canal. So that means that it should be structurally sound underneath, even if you remove the water. So there is problems with this film.
Yeah, it was possibly built hastily to fend off the monsters, but that's just me filling in the blanks at this point.
But it's like it's obviously some kind of inlet that they've carved out the land and then the water filled in, because they do expressly say, Ken, man-made canal. It's not a natural canal. So I don't know, but there's just. I think the writing is quite bad. There are some lines where Raya's trying to be hip and trendy, where she doesn't quite say that's on fleek, but she says some stuff that's like, oh, this is a 30-year-old writing what a 15-year-old sounds like, and that doesn't quite work for me. I don't think a lot of the characters are types. It's like the obnoxious kid with the smug kid face, who actually has a deeper story underneath. But
the lovable giant who seems like a a monster, but he's actually a good guy.
Heart of Gold. And Con Baby is actually probably the best part of the movie. I like Con Baby. That feels fresh.
Yeah.
And like the cute animal sidekick, who's actually a large animal sidekick in the end. It's just, it all feels very by type. And again, it is probably one of those films that suffers from us watching all of these movies back to back to back to back. Because it is your very stock going on an adventure, build a group of sidekicks. It's The Black Cauldron. It's Atlantis. It's those movies just done again. And done probably as well as Black Cauldron. It is, I think, as forgettable and mediocre as Black Cauldron, but I would have preferred Atlantis.
Starting here with the animation gear at the top. The film is set in a fantasy land called Kumandra, which is inspired by Southeast Asian cultures like Brunei, Singapore, Laos, Thailand, Timor-Leste, Cambodia, Vietnam, Myanmar, Malaysia, Indonesia, and the Philippines. So it's a combination of all these different things. The production team, of course, travelled to all these countries, except Myanmar, Malaysia, Singapore, and Brunei to conduct research. So
it's a good thing they got that in before COVID.
Yeah,
the poor COVID era Disney filmmakers are churning out films. It's like, how will we get our inspiration? Was that to Google Myanmar and just look at pictures? We can't just go there?
Now flights are opening up again, and they're like, oh, we have to go to this place to research it.
Yeah, very important research mission here to all these lovely Southeast Asian countries.
Thai artist Fawn Vera Sunthorn, I'm sorry if I got that wrong, served as the head of story for the film, and to ensure authenticity, the studio convened a Southeast Asia Story Trust, a collective of cultural consultants for the film, which included Dr. Steve Arunsak, an associate professor of Lao anthropology at California State. There you go.
So they actually did the thing they're supposed to do.
They did the thing they were supposed to do, but they still didn't do it in the way that they should have.
Well, how should they have done it?
There has been some criticism of the film.
They tried.
Yeah.
They probably... You see, what probably happened is like, they're like, actually, no, this isn't authentic. And some Disney exec is like, well, actually, this was focus tested better. It's like, yeah, but you're trying to make something authentic to this culture. It's like, ooh, sorry, focus test says no. Marketing says this is cuter than that, so...
And also, if you're trying to span that many cultures, because they're similar but different.
Yeah, there's a lot of very different cultures. That's like saying Ireland and England has the same culture, and we know that's not true. Even though there are broad similarities, like on a deeper cultural level, they're very different places. So to be like, all these Southeast Asian countries are the same, it's like, no.
As has been the case in the last few years, the visuals are very impressive and even very beautiful at times, but this has become par for the course.
It doesn't wow me anymore.
No.
And like, I don't think it's the case that it can't wow me anymore, because Zootopia did.
Yeah.
Like, Zootopia had a lot of stuff, like, in terms of world design, that really did, like, wow me. Where I'm like, wow, that looks spectacular. The only area in this film that I thought, like, veered even close to that was the heart area.
Yeah.
With, like, the large circular rock thing.
The archipelago, yeah.
Yeah, it looked very distinct. As opposed to the rest of the film, it's just like, it's desert, it's trees, it's ice forest. There's nothing there that you're like, oh, you know, that's sensational. In the same way that, as I said, like Zootopia, jaw-dropping. The level of detail in that world and how they realize that animal world and all the different biomes within it and all like the clever, creative animation choices to deepen the world and create something that feels like fully formed and lived in. Spectacular. So I don't think it's the case that like these films have reached the stage where this is the new normal, and while it looks very good, it can no longer impress me, because Zootopia did. And it's fine. I don't, it feels like, you remember after Sleeping Beauty, when they were like, you know, that's a sensationally good-looking film, but now we're not really trying anymore. And,
yep.
And the films after that looked good and in-the-house style, but they weren't nearly as, like, detailed and brilliant as Sleeping Beauty. And it feels a little like that to me now, after, say, Zootopia, which is a very similar to Sleeping Beauty in that it's a very dense, imaginative world rendered on screen. And after that, the films are maybe a little more generic.
Yeah, there's not much going on in these backgrounds. As you said, like, they did make some effort to have each region have a distinct look, but when you come down to it, a lot of the backdrops are, as you said, desert. There is a forest with fog, you know. So, like, if you look at Frozen 2 as well, like, it's not they're taking shortcuts, but I suppose the turnaround on these movies has become, like, it's gone down from 4 years to 2 years in some ways, so...
Yeah, so these shortcuts have to be made, like, and it's like, it's really, it's not like they're taking shortcuts on the areas they choose, they're choosing areas that they can expressly take shortcuts on. You know, whereas Zootopia, where it's like, we're going to make this giant city and we have to do it like that, otherwise it'll look terrible. But when you go back to like Meet the Robinsons, which is a kind of more basic version of Zootopia, fair enough, people instead of animals, but this like futuristic city, but it was much more scaled back and much less detailed. Whereas now they're just like, we're just going to do a lot of scenes in a forest, we're just going to do a lot of scenes in a desert, and that means we can have places that look sparse but make sense that they look sparse, so no one's really going to call us on it.
Frozen.
Sparse or sparse?
I say sparse.
Yeah.
Again here, like Frozen 2, the characters lacked expression and life for me. I find it hard to connect with them in the same way that I did with the animation films of the 90s. I don't know what it is about them now.
It's the round, I'm telling you, it's the rounded faces. It's just like that Disney animated house style, or all these, the kid character on the boat is the worst one, where he just has like that smug DreamWorks face. And it's like, oh, all the smug DreamWorks characters look like this, and it's annoying, and it just makes these characters feel like they're templates plucked from like a 3D rendering program, which maybe they are, knowing how they turn these films around quicker. It just makes these characters, they don't feel distinct anymore, as opposed to like, you look at the character designs of Snow White, you look at the character designs of Ariel, you look at the character designs of Jasmine. They are iconic, they are different, they are unique looking. You look at the character designs of Moana versus the character designs of Raya, and they're all like in that same template and mold, and they all just look kind of the same. And it's the reason I kind of bumped on them converting all of the princesses to 3D in Ralph Breaks the Internet, because it's like, you've just made all these people look the same.
It homogenized them in a lot of ways.
Yeah, there's like all these distinct characters like Mulan and Pocahontas and Ariel. They now all look like that just rounded, bland, generic 3D style you have, and it's weird to see all these characters they have the same face. That's the problem. They all just have the same face.
A couple of things, Gar, I won't say I dumped on all this animation. I did like a couple of things. I enjoyed the way they adopted some different styles, like the painted scroll motif for, you know, the world building, and the graphical comic book style in some of the, you know, every time they were talking about their plans, they'd go into a different kind of graphical style, which I liked. I also thought the action sequences were extremely well done, especially the fight scenes. The way they've been able to develop animation to the point where they can mimic real life and movement is uncanny. Because like before, you take shortcuts to show a fight sequence to kind of get from A to B, but they were full on dancing. Like there was a Rana at one point in this movie. Like
that's actually, I was thinking about that more about with the short beforehand.
Yeah.
Which is, obviously, this is the first film during the period of the podcast which we have seen in theatre, so we're going to talk about the short, which I don't remember the name of.
Us Again, I think it's called.
Yeah, but it's a story about two people aging and dancing. But I was just thinking about how hard it must be to animate dancing.
Yeah, I thought that too when I was watching it.
I remember one of the package films had a dancing sequence where they actively like filmed somebody and traced it.
It's called rotoscoping, if you don't remember.
Yes, to get around the difficulty of trying to animate dancing fluidly, which again must just be extraordinarily difficult to do without mocapping it these days, which I'd imagine is what they'd probably try to do to make it easier. Because like animating those kind of movements is so hard to make them look organic and make them look authentic and make them look like fluid as part of, as you said, these action scenes where people are flying all over the place and throwing swords around and spears and fighting. That must be very difficult.
Doing hurricanes.
I do wonder, do you think they mocap it?
No, I think it still felt a little bit off. Not off, well, that's probably the wrong word, but it felt like a little bit like it was man-made.
Yeah.
Like the movements were fluid and they were interesting and they were diverse, but they also weren't perfect. So I think maybe they use reference, but I don't think they mocapped it. Also, Raya's sword is super cool.
Oh, it's like a whip. It's a whip sword.
Yeah.
Which they have in Bloodborne. It's a threaded cane. It's a whip cane in Bloodborne. It's also quite cool.
Moving on here to the story, Gar, we basically have a mythical quest on our hand. We collect a ragtag bunch of misfits along the way to collect the magical gems. Am I using this right, Gar? You said I haven't used it right in the past. MacGuffin?
They're MacGuffins.
Yes.
It's just magical stone, save the world. Plot. What? Okay, another plot point I'm unsure on. When they first used the stone back 500 years ago or whatever,
yeah,
it didn't bring back the dragons.
Ooh, I have that in my notes, Gar.
Why did it this time? And it felt like that's a plot point that they were going to address here. It's like, oh, we also need to do something extra to bring back the dragons?
Because it said at the start, and everyone came back.
Yeah.
So why are they still stone?
Why were the dragons still stone then? But they didn't do anything different. It was the same idea. It's a group of people who are using trust between each other to save the world. They didn't do anything different. Why did it save the dragons this time?
I don't know, Gar. I thought that was a bit of a plot hole.
Yeah, it's just like, I thought they'd have to do something. It's like, and we have to add this extra magical bit to bring the dragons back. But no, I don't know. This film had a bunch of things like in theory, this plot is very simple. It's about warring nations coming together to trust each other to build a better world, which is a perfectly nice story, and one that doesn't really apply to our world these days because everyone hates each other and it's unrealistic.
Yeah. Well, I suppose the idea, the themes of division, mistrust, and tribalism mirror our world, but the resolution doesn't.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I get it. I get why they do it, and I get it's an idealistic story about how we just trust each other and we'll all get along, and it's very unfortunately not the world we live in. And maybe kids will see this film and be like, yeah, let's trust each other. It's like... The
thing is, we see at the end that all the regions immediately agree to reunite as Comanche. I know that's a movie aimed at children, as we said, but in real life, it wouldn't be as simple as that.
Should have been, like, they committed dreadful crimes. The Fang?
Yeah.
Fang are the one, yeah. Like, they did legitimately destroy the world. Should they not see some punishment for that?
The thing is, as you said, the descent into destruction is much slower and more complicated. The divisions in our society don't simply go away when faced with a sudden and imminent threat. The pandemic will teach you that.
Literally, yeah. If anything, it divides us further.
I think you could have still had that ending, but I probably would have ended with them coming together in good faith for the meal that they were supposed to have at the start, to show that they were starting to work out their differences, not like, we're back together again.
We're all pals. And there is a moment toward the end of the film where the Mari character shoots Sisu, kills her, and then later she's like, no, Raya, you're just as at fault here as I am. It's like, no, she's not. You can argue that, yes, she should have trusted her friend, but she's not the one that betrayed you with a crossbow and then shot her. So,
and in the first place, stabbed her in the back when she was a child.
Yeah, so you doubly betrayed her because she brought you back to this moment in good faith to work together, and you didn't trust her again. So, like, don't you try and gaslight Raya here, being like, you are just as at fault as I am in this situation. They also do the false death fake out again.
We're simpatico on this because that really annoyed me. The fact that they reneged on Sisu's death. I know that we've come to expect this stuff, but if ever there was a time to actually honour the stakes in a way that wasn't too traumatic, because obviously she was gone and we moved on with the story, and we could just like come together at the end and kind of mourn her in a way that's like she sacrificed herself so we could all live.
Also, the dragon shouldn't have come back either. It should have been like, we have learned to live in a world without these dragons. We don't need the dragons as the crutch to keep this world together. We can do it ourselves. We have finally learned to trust, which is the lesson they were trying to teach us all along. Instead, they brought back the one that died and all the other ones. So even if they get out of line, all the dragons can be like wagging their dragon finger, being like, no, dragon powers, stop it.
Although, one thing I forgot about the animation, I did enjoy the way they used the rain to fly.
Yes, that was quite cool, where they stood on the rain.
And all the animation splash effects. But yeah, I could get over the dragons coming back. But Sisu sacrificed herself, basically. Maybe unknowingly, she became a bit of a martyr. But you could have left it there.
Yeah. And like, here's the thing. People will be like, it's a children's film. Of course she has to come back. Don't do the death.
Yeah.
Just don't do it. Like, you can do tension, you can do like all hope is lost moments, you can fracture their relationship if you do it well. Just don't do the death if you're going to undo it. It's so cheap and lazy and just tired. And especially as we're on, what are we on, 59?
Yes.
We're on the 59th movie. There's a good like 20 of them that have done a death fake out. I think going all the way back to the Jungle Book. And it's so tired. Stop it.
And the thing is, we moved on from it. And like, we were literally coming towards just the film's resolution. And they're like, wait a second.
Yeah.
Bloop, 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 bloop. Here she is.
What brought her back?
The other dragons, I guess?
She died.
I think they revived her.
Stupid.
They never mentioned that they were able to do that, but they can apparently because of magic.
Well, all the dragons have different magic powers. Surely resurrection is one of them, I suppose.
Gar, you mentioned the dialogue in this film. I wanted to discuss that. I feel like it's an attempt to appeal to today's younger generation. The issue is that it's being written by millennials or older who don't understand today's youth culture. That kind of approach, as we said before in previous episodes, really dates these movies and causes them to age really badly.
Yeah.
But due to
the DreamWorks problem.
Yeah. But due to the internet, youth culture moves so fast these days that it's impossible impossible to have a timely reference.
Yeah.
Because we've gone from having generations and eras to moments in time, and they're gone in an instant. Like, how quickly does the culture move these days? You know,
memes just rise up and disappear in the space of a week, and then dead memes are there, and it is the DreamWorks problem. It's like these films age like a lead stone. Also, like when you think about the period from which this film is written to the period in which it meets the screen, it's already dated. It's not even like it's dated when it comes out to like a year later. It's like this is written in 2019, released in 2021. Like 2019 is decades ago in the modern cultural consciousness. So if you put in a reference or a joke or an in-word, it's just going to feel like incredibly, it's out of date. And as I said, it's not quite like Yas Queen. It's not quite, oh, that's on fleek, but it's close enough at times.
Or, well, that happened.
Yeah. Which, what was I watching? Oh, the Space Jam trailer has frickin' Daffy Duck being like, well, that happened. And I'm like, oh, God.
It's nearly enough not to watch it.
It is. It's infuriating. But yeah, it's this. I don't like this movie.
A couple of things that Raya said, like, note to self, don't die. And she basically says, hey, you're stupid, undercut, to Minari. And it's like, no. Because, like, the whole point is this film is supposed to be in either an ancient mythical world or possibly a futuristic one that's kind of dystopian.
Yeah.
And this really jars with the fact that they're using modern language.
Just a desperate attempt to seem cool, and it's not a good one, and it's never a good one. Let those kids use their language, and if you want to use their language in their movies, let them make movies. And they will make movies, and it'll seem good and authentic then, and until then, shut up. Yeah. Stop being children know, like, this generation of all generations know when they're being patronized, you know?
Yeah, exactly. A couple more things here, Gar. What did you make of Awkwafina as Sisu?
I think it's fine for what it is, but Awkwafina is one of those people who's just doing her thing in everything she's in.
Yeah, it's very hard to. Yeah, it's a lot, but it's very hard to buy her as a character because all I'm hearing is Awkwafina.
Yeah,
Awkwafina.
And it's just one of those things where it's like, and yeah, maybe I'm being hypocritical because you could say the same about something like Robin Williams,
or Eddie Murphy,
very much just doing Robin Williams, but also he's a generational talent. And Awkwafina is exceptionally talented, but
I like her shtick as well. That's the thing. I like her deal. But it just, I don't know. It just stuck out too much for me in this film.
Maybe it's just because I dislike every part of this film, basically, now that I think about it, so...
One more thing here as well, Gar. The Droon as a villain.
Yes. The angst and anger of society emerging.
It looked like that, I can't remember what they called it, but do you remember in the Harry Potter prequel, Fantastic Beasts, Flash, I can't remember his name in it. He's Dumbledore's brother, I think.
Yeah.
Has that cloud thing that he's like a animagus, is that? No.
Who cares?
I can't remember. Anyway, it reminded me of that. And like, of course, the Fang people are sort of the villains as well. But I think this could have used a more real, tangible threat.
Yeah. You know what, actually, now that I think about it, my biggest problem with this film is, from a plot perspective, it's plotted like a video game.
Interesting.
You know, they start out with a powerless couple of characters. She meets the dragon, and then they go to each zone where they get the magical MacGuffin, which makes the dragon more powerful. And
at the right opportune time.
Yeah,
the powers are all very useful at the time that they need them.
And they collect a party of people to it's plotted like an RPG, and that's bad. Because like video games, there's a reason the vast majority of video game adaptations end up being bad, because video games are an interactive medium, and like usually the story sucks. So it's interacting with them that it makes them enjoyable. So when you start plotting things like a video game where it's like, and now you get the new power up so you can defeat these enemies in this sequence, it's like, whoa, that's not very satisfying to watch.
Do you think that was a conscious choice?
I think it's more video game culture seeping into filmmaking as opposed to like a conscious, we're going to make this film the same way people interact with video games. But it's not good either way. I don't enjoy it. Like, but what's Raya's character arc in this movie?
Well, she's a protector of the gem, and then her dad dies. And then she feels like she's responsible because she trusted Minari.
Which, like, yeah.
And then she's trying to make it right, I guess.
And she learns to trust, I guess. But also, her trust issues are fully, like, thumbs up, you deserve to have them. She betrayed you and destroyed the world. Like, that's a world in which you probably shouldn't have trust. I don't know. I don't particularly care for any of these characters. I'm not going to be thinking about Boat Kid or Gruff Man. I don't know their names. I'm not going to learn their names. I'm not even I have the Wikipedia in front of me. I could learn their names right now.
Boat Kid is Boone. genuinely.
I don't care.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, and I know what they want me to take away from this movie, but I thought it was very ham-fisted.
it's not even remotely subtle.
Yeah.
I thought at the start it was going to be a climate movie, where it's like, and then the world was destroyed, and the dragons were a metaphor for like planet and climate, but now they move more in we live in a divided world, and we've got to come together. Which, like, see, again, the reason I hate messages like that at the moment is that, like, that is just not reflective of the way that division is working right now, because basically you have people acting in good faith and you have people acting in bad faith, and realistically the approach there is not to actually win over the people acting in bad faith. They're going to continue to act in bad faith. We've seen that over and over and over again. It's more to drive home the messages of acting in good faith and try and get more people to do that, as opposed to like, we should all come together. It's like, no, these people are actively sabotaging everything else. They should not be enabled. They should not be treated as a side that needs to be convinced. They're people that are acting in bad faith and dragging everybody else around them down. Ugh, these things annoy me.
This is a rare Disney princess film with no songs, Gar. The film is more focused on action than anything else. We have one song at the end by Janae Aiko, wrote and performed by herself. For the end credits, it's called Lead the Way. We didn't really stay to listen to it. You'll hear it later.
Yeah, COVID guidelines. We left in a timely and quick fashion.
James Newton Howard returned to compose the score for Raya, having previously composed the score for Dinosaur, Atlantis, and Treasure Planet.
Interesting bunch of movies, though. This is very much in the vein of the Atlantis and Treasure Planet. Treasure Planet is a good score. I can't think of Atlantis, and this is completely... I can't think of a single like musical track from this movie, so it's fine.
No, I literally cannot...
I can't even like imagine the music.
I don't think
nothing in this movie is good. This movie is just like it's not even that cynical. Everything is just fine. The performances are fine. The story is fine. The music is fine.
Yeah, you won't notice the score at all.
And if you pick at it, there's holes there, particularly in the plot, as we mentioned. There's a bunch of things that they're just, you know, it's convenient for this to happen, so it happens. As opposed to we've earned it, or as opposed to actually plotting a movie that makes sense. It's just fine.
Also, Gar, this is a brand new movie, so we normally talk about legacy. There's not much so far, but Raya is the studio's first true post-pandemic test. Mm-hmm. It's only now getting a proper theatrical run worldwide, so time will tell how successful it will be and where it will land in the Disney canon. I don't really know how it's being received by audiences as such.
Well, it's being well received by all accounts. But yeah, as you said, that's people watching on Disney Plus. So how do you measure that? You know what? On the topic of dragon movies, I watched Wish Dragon on Netflix this weekend.
Yeah, I thought that was funny that they're both out around the same time.
Yeah, better movie. It's Aladdin with dragons in China, but it's a better movie.
There we go. Go and watch that instead.
Yeah, go watch Wish Dragon. It's more charming. There's more in it. And it's like, it's super generic, but it's generic done well, as opposed to this, which is super generic with just boring. It's just boring.
The film was also criticised for the lack of Southeast Asian representation in the cast. Most of the cast are East Asian in heritage, with the exception of a few. Felicia Wade of Discussing Film pointed out this in her review, commenting that the disheartening lack of accurate representation in the vocal cast and the fact that it misses the mark at its core. And I think in Hollywood, like, I think what they fell into there was Asian will do. Representing, Asian will do. But then again, there's a lot of Filipino Americans in Hollywood. Cast. Yeah, at least.
Yeah.
I mean, like, I know they don't have many maybe Lao Americans or people from Myanmar, etc. But
that's what they'll always do. It's like, oh, you know, there's not these actors. You just want the names. You just want Awkwafina. You just want Kelly Marie Tran. You know,
literally collecting all the known Asian actresses and actors in Hollywood.
Yeah, you just want Benedict Wong. You just want the people who are in your Star Wars and in your Marvel movies, and you're gonna put them in it. And then Alan Tudyk too, he played Tuk Tuk.
He plays Tuk Tuk. Yeah.
What is he just like? Oh, he's just doing the noise.
He's sort of like a modern day Cummings in the sense
where he's in everything. Yeah,
he just does. Like, he's not just a voice actor, and he obviously acts in film roles and TV as well. But he's a talented voice actor.
How do you get into a role like that at Disney, where they're just like, we're going to put you in all of our films? And it's like, thank you.
I think he's just
we like you so much that we're going to put you in every film we make.
He's played villains, he's played creatures. I think he's just good at what he does.
He is very good. I'm going all the way back to Firefly. Do you remember in Firefly, Ken?
No.
Have you ever watched Firefly?
I have not.
Yeah, he's in Firefly. He's very good in Firefly. But yeah, it's like the guy who does the voice of Rex in the Pixar movies. They're just like, we're going to put you in all of our movies now.
Wallace Shawn.
Yeah.
The overwhelming feeling for me, and we've touched on this in the last few weeks, is while these films may continue to make money, I think we're slipping into a period of creative decline.
And Yeah, it feels... It's not as bad as the early 2000s. Actually, no, as I said, like, Atlantis is this same film done better. You know, ragtag group of misfits goes to find something, finds it, blah-de-blah. You know? This is like Black Cauldron level generic, where it's right there as a film that I think is pretty unremarkable and you'll just forget about.
That's it.
That's this film. And its moral is something that's idealistic, but again, it doesn't really explore the issues around division and where division actually comes from. The closest it actually came was the what's her name? Namari's mother in Fang. There was a brief period where she was indoctrinating children through puppet shows.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh yeah, fascism. Yeah. That's how that works.
That was given a bit of a light touch as well, though, which is like...
And they just moved on. It's like she was sitting there teaching them the ways of how they need to be strong and they need to protect themselves. When
stab everyone else in the back.
They took power by force and destroyed the world in doing so. So yeah, it's they didn't go near that. So well. This film that's the thing. This film is like division is bad, but then has nothing actually to say about that.
And then it resolves it in a very convoluted and convenient fashion.
So it's just empty. And it tries to deal with a very serious, and as you said, it is a very pressing issue, and one that's very difficult to solve, and one that's very nuanced, and has a lot of sides to it, which everyone loves to hear. And it just does nothing with it. Ugh. I'm disappointed, Ken. This was our first cinema film back.
Yeah.
And I was like, yay, cinemas. At least the popcorn was nice.
And this also should have been a moment for us because we did it, Gar. We've watched and reviewed every Disney animated feature film released in theatres to date. And the pandemic is hopefully coming to an end, so it's time for us to go off into the sunset like all our favourite Disney princesses.
We're free?
We're free, Gar. We're like the genie. Our cuffs have come off. There's no point in plugging anything because the podcast is over, so goodbye forever to our ragtag group of loyal listeners.
How far do we go into this bit before? What if people are like, the podcast is over together, they X out and they're like, no, wait, I'm not going to listen to the fact that there's going to be more episodes in the future.
Gar, I'm not ready to go.
No. In the immortal words of, what's his name? David Tennant. I don't want to go.
Do you want to keep this thing going and perhaps delve into the world of Disney Pixar?
Yeah!
Let's do it. Let's renege on our premise.
Pixar. Like all things, people are going to, when we're eventually somehow in space reviewing, I don't know, potato chips, they're like, how did this start out? It's like, oh, it was a Disney podcast.
Yeah, and now they solve crimes.
Yeah.
So let's do it, Gar. We'll be back in 2 weeks with a review of Pixar's first animated feature, Toy Story, so be sure to join us for that on June 28th. But don't worry, we aren't going to leave you hanging. Keep an eye out for something special in your pod feeds next week. But until then, stay safe and remember, someone has to take the first step. Short and sweet this week.
That's not even a particularly interesting moral.
I've come up with 58 of them, come on.
Boring film. It's the film's fault, it's not your fault.
Now, even though it's the end of our Disney animation reviews for now, there's still a musical treat in store for you as always.
As you said, yeah, it's even for now. They're going to make more of these, we'll be back.
Nicole is here to cap off phase 1 of Magic by Design with her version of Lead the Way from Raya and the Last Dragon. Thanks so much for listening to our journey so far, and we sincerely hope that you'll join us for the next phase. Now, take us home, Nicole.
Hello there, my Disney lovers. It's me, your musical correspondent, Nicole, coming to you live from my bedroom. Can you believe it? We've made it to the most recent movie, Raya and the Last Dragon. James Newton Howard returns to score the movie, who has not scored a movie for Disney since Treasure Planet in 2002. He blends lyrical strings with traditional Southeast Asian instruments like the chimes, hand drums and lutes. The score is also heavily synthesized in parts and features some choral parts. The soundtrack features one song called Lead the Way, sung by Grammy-nominated alternative R&B singer-songwriter Jhené Aiko. She is known for contributing vocals to some B2K tracks and also working with Big Sean, as well as her own albums. A Filipino version of the Lead the Way track, titled Gabe, is sung by KZ Tandingan, who rose to fame after winning the first season of the Filipino X Factor. So, here's my version of Lead the Way. I hope you enjoy it. We have a choice to build or destroy, to fight or to come together. Love is a bridge and trust is a gift. We give it or it gets better. There's an energy in the water. There's a magic deep in our heart. There's a legacy that we honor when we bring light to the dark. Whatever brings us together can never tear us apart. We become stronger than ever when we just trust and believe that you'll see that when we just trust and believe that. up your heart and feel there's no difference, we're all family here. Despite all of our doubts, all our up and downs, there is never really anything to fear. Listen